Hello and welcome to this warm campfire yet again. Cactus, do you have another story for me today?
I do. Today, I want to tell you a story, the continuing story of a man named Luther Everborn, commonly known to his friends, at least, as Prior. You see, his name has a lot of significance in his story. Luther was a child of the Bomaresian theocracy. And within that country, growing up under the tutelage of the Iron Cathedral, the clerics and the paladins that worship the god Helm, the god of protection. You see, Luther was originally planned to be a cleric of Helm, and although he wasn't, I guess, the brightest or the best amongst his class, he, tried his hardest to follow the teachings of the Iron Cathedral that he best saw fit. Studying under Tanku Windblade, Luther struggled for the most part in following the tenets exactly, and those tenets were tested when he eventually found a woman whose name isn't super important at this point in the story, only to say that he fell so in love that he started to sort of neglect his teachings, and so in love, that he eventually begot a daughter who he named Callie after the woman who he loved, who would eventually succumb in childbirth. And it was Callie who sort of became Luther's everyday impetus for living, and his I don't think obsession is the right word, but it was his joy and his light. And if he was a follower of Helm, the thing that he cared most about protecting was her. When Callie was young, at a very young age, around I think 10 or so, she succumbed to an illness known as Fey rot, an illness that strikes seemingly out of nowhere, a disease that hadn't been seen in the country or in the continent of Valhalla in a very, very long time. Luther did his best to do research on the subject, and in researching Fey rot found that it's one part disease and one part's magic. Vines grow out from the extremities and make their way into the internal organs, where they begin to very, very slowly and excruciatingly kind of like pull the life out from the person who has the affliction. Needless to say that when this happened, Luther threw everything to the side to try and fix what was ultimately unfixable, such that her the disease progressed such to a point that he realized that there was nothing that he could really do, and she was just sort of in a comatose state. Luther more or less waiting for her to die, and upset that none of the followers of this god of protection could do anything, him least of all, to save his daughter. He fell sort of into the arms of the bottle, and in a low state of drunken desperation found himself called into the wastes in the middle of Valhalla, where he found an ancient temple, and searching for ancient answers to this ancient affliction, found within the temple a book. It was a book bound in bandages and rags, sort of disgusting, dry, with some sort of, with matted hair and would look to be bile and blood, phlegm that had soaked in through. But it was a book nonetheless. And when he opened the book, it was at the first time that Luther felt the eyes of what would come to be known as the Bandaged Man, a creature more in Luther's mind than in reality that was, for all intents and purposes, a mummified corpse covered in bandages, covered in disgusting colors. The only thing visible of it were his eyes. But Luther could hear the voice in his head emanating from the bandaged man, who made him a promise that if Luther were to find this creature, this person, this deity, this aberration, if he was able to find the name of the bandaged man and place it in the bandaged book, that the bandaged man would deliver Callie from this disease. It was at this point that he ran back to the Iron Cathedral, and Callie was gone. That night, he had a dream of Callie sitting at the bottom of an hourglass, the sand very slowly trickling onto her. And he knew that what he had to do was save her, rebuking the emblem of Helm, and thinking to himself that the only name that would be important to him in the future would be the name of the bandaged man. So he rebuked Luther Everborn and adopted the name Prior and set out on his quest to find this name, searching for dark secrets, finding himself now imbued with the power of the bandaged man that emanated from the bandaged book. He found his way onto a train headed into the middle of the wastes, with a ragtag group of fellow adventurers, each of them searching for something in their own right. And in doing so, he found himself under the employ of the Rift Corporation, where he was tasked with going to ancient ruins to acquire powerful artifacts. That's sort of where the real bulk of his story began. Do you want to know how it progressed at all?
Oh no, absolutely. I'm already synced into this backstory. How does it continue, or how does it end so far for this character?
Well, it's yet to end, but as it continued, Luther, never really revealing his true name to his party, eventually found some evidence of the bandaged man. He read some old dwarven poems that revealed to him that a similar bandaged creature, a teller of prophecy, lived in the vast deserts of Moan, the deserts that expand out from the Moan's Great Mountains, a wasteland as far as anyone knows. So after acquiring a couple of artifacts and sailing back into the Bomaresian theocracy, the group of adventurers had decided to pass through the Iron Cathedral rather than see his old mentors again and face the reality. He went on a separate quest to the sands of Moan, hoping to find some answers there. In doing so, being so separated from any strong grouping of people to protect him, his hubris got him into trouble, and he was kidnapped by a powerful group, realizing that he was sort of a pawn in the games of larger corporations, the Rift Corporation being one of them. He was trapped in a pit in the desert, waiting for his friends to rescue him. And rescue him they did, but not before Luther had a bit of a struggle with his own sanity, and in a particularly low moment, reaching back out to the god of Helm, who had been, so silent in his life, who aided in his escape. Eventually, he was able to make his way down into an ancient ruin in the sands of Moan. And after fighting an ancient blue dragon, was able to learn the name of the bandaged man, writing the name Tarnahel in his bandaged book. He was granted new powers and was able to meet a long-bound god of prophecy. Unfortunately for Luther, as he sort of took in his old name of Luther Everborn, he learned that it wouldn't be so simple in saving Callie. Tarnahel, thankful though that he had been released, had vowed to help him in any way that he can, but to release Callie in this state would certainly kill her. There was another ancient deity, the one that had bound Tarnahel, or at least was responsible for his binding into the bandages. And that creature, that deity, was still had a hand in this sort of ultimate game that Luther and his friends were a part of. So in order to fix things, he realized he had to move forward, begin to collect the last of these ancient artifacts for a benefactor who he suspected would be using them for ill-gotten gains. It was only in collecting the most recent and the last of the ancient artifacts that he learned that, in fact, there was some nefarious purpose behind the Rift Corporation and why he had been hired, such that he suspected that everything in his story had been rigged by external forces from the start. And whether for revenge or for the love of his daughter, he struggled forward to figure out what the end of his story would be. But the bandaged book, now unbandaged, in the possession of Luther Everborn, the pen is still wet with ink, and he has yet to write the end of his own story.
Wow. Well, I hope that it comes to at least some form of a happy ending for Luther Everborn.
I hope so too. A lot of his story, a lot of the things that he's done, everything that he's done has been in service of helping one person. And I can only hope that at the end of everything that he'll be reunited with his daughter again.
Well, thank you very much, Cactus, for this story, for this tale, and hopefully we will find out the end of Luther Everborn's story at some point soon. Thank you very much for joining us, and, well, we hope that you had a good night listening to this story. Take care.